Hey there, welcome to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case, and tonight the Secret Service is grilled once again by Congress over the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Hamas's top leader is killed in Iran, and the leader of the controversial Project 2025 steps down. All right, well, as you can see, Renata is out. She's actually going to be out for the next couple weeks here. She's on vacation, so in her absence, I will be hosting alongside my good friend, FISM's Ian Patrick. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you so much, Sam. You know, I hosted more recently with Rennie, so it feels as though I should host with you now. It just feels like sort of equaling the scales.
Yeah, you have to make up for it a little bit.
I have to make up for it. That's exactly right, yeah.
Well, this is going to be a lot of fun. So we'll start with this. Senate lawmakers, as I said, grilled acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rao on Capitol Hill yesterday. This is over the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. In his opening statement, Rao said that the security failures at the Pennsylvania rally where Trump was ultimately shot were, in his words, indefensible. Take a look at this.
One of my first actions as acting director was traveling to the Butler Farm Show site. What I saw made me ashamed. As a career law enforcement officer and a 25-year veteran with the Secret Service, I cannot defend why that roof was not better secured.
His testimony comes as the local SWAT team blames the failures on a breakdown in communication with the Secret Service, which Rowe says is largely the fault of local law enforcement.
I would like to point out that based on what I know right now, neither the Secret Service counter-sniper teams nor members of the former president's security detail had any knowledge that there was a man on the roof of the AGR building with a firearm. It is my understanding those personnel were not aware the assailant had a firearm until they heard gunshots. Prior to that, they were operating with the knowledge that local law enforcement was working an issue of a suspicious individual prior to the shots being fired.
Despite the catastrophic failures, no one has been fired over the assassination attempt. The only person who has stepped down so far has been Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle herself, who resigned 10 days after the incident. In a very heated exchange, Republican Senator Josh Hawley pressed Rowe on exactly why no one else has lost their job.
You're asking me, Senator, to completely make a rush to judgment about somebody failing. I acknowledge this was a failure of the Secret Service.
Is it not prima facie that somebody has failed? A former president was shot.
Sir, this could have been our Texas school book depository. I have lost sleep over that for the last 17 days, just like you have.
Somebody to hold them accountable.
I will tell you, Senator, that I will not rush to judgment, that people will be held accountable, and I will do so with integrity and not rush to judgment and put people unfairly persecuted.
Unfairly persecuted?
Unfairly,
We've got people
sir,
who are
we
dead.
have to be able to have a proper investigation into this.
Rowe said the investigation is still ongoing and said any employees who failed to follow protocol will be disciplined.
But you can tell that the Secret Service is obviously working hard to prevent another assassination attempt, especially on the former president's life. This is proven by a new report which claims that there was yet another security concern raised at one of Trump's speeches. On Saturday, Trump spoke before a crowd in Nashville, Tennessee at the 2024 Bitcoin conference, but a new report from Fox News showed that Secret Service had actually delayed his speech for some time in order to locate two specific individuals. These two had apparently bypassed at least one part of the entry protocols to attend the event. Secret Service ejected the individuals when they were located, and they were questioned by law enforcement afterwards, but neither person is currently facing charges related to the incident. A spokesperson for Secret Service confirmed that despite the hubbub, overall there was never a threat to the former president's life. Trump even referenced the hold when he started his speech, saying Secret Service should, quote, take all the time they need.
So, Secret Service just told me, sir, would like a little more time. I said, you take all the time you want. You can take 2 hours, 3 hours, the hell with the people that have been waiting out here, but I'm sure they don't mind either.
All right, now taking a look across the aisle here, where presumptive Democratic presidential nominee, that would be Kamala Harris, is vowing to revive the Senate's failed bipartisan border bill from earlier this year. Her announcement comes as Republicans have been stepping up attacks on Harris's record as the Biden administration's so-called border czar amid record illegal immigration at the southern border. Speaking at a rally in Georgia yesterday, Harris tried to blame the border crisis on Donald Trump for urging Republicans to vote against the border bill.
Some of the most conservative Republicans in Washington, D.C. supported the bill. Even the Border Patrol endorsed it. It was all set to pass. But at the last minute, Trump directed his allies in the Senate to vote it down. Right. He tanked the bipartisan deal because he thought it would help him win an election. So here is my pledge to you. As president, I will bring back the border security bill that Donald Trump killed, and I will sign it into law.
At the time, Trump and other hardline Republicans rejected the deal for allowing up to 5,000 migrant encounters a day before shutting down the border, a point that Trump raised yet again earlier this week.
Why were you against the House, against the Senate border deal, the bipartisan border?
Well, they allow 5,000 people a week, but a lot of people took it as 5,000 people a day. They said 5,000 people a week, and you read it, and it says 5,000 people a day. Number one, that, but it also made it much better for the opposing side.
It regularized, managed the crisis.
You couldn't manage it. It was so complex.
House Speaker Mike Johnson slammed the bill when first introduced, calling it madness, and said it would be, quote, dead on arrival in the Republican-led House.
And ironically, the border under Kamala Harris happens to be the topic of the latest attack ad from the Trump campaign. This advertisement cites various failures on the border under Harris's administration, including the existence of 10 million illegal immigrants in the U.S. and some subsequent criminal activities. It also uses part of an interview from 2021 where Harris deflects on even visiting the border.
Do you have any plans to visit the border? You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making.
The ad also says that Harris is, quote, failed, weak, and dangerously liberal. But the Harris campaign has recently released its own advertisement, bolstering its candidate as a fearless woman in politics. Marking the first ad of Harris's campaign officially, it also takes quotes from a speech that she gave before a crowd in Wisconsin.
We believe in a future where every person has the opportunity not just to get by, but to get ahead. Where every senior can retire with dignity. But Donald Trump wants to take our country backward, to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations and end the Affordable Care Act. But we are not going back.
The Harris campaign recently announced that it will be spending $50 million on paid media ahead of the upcoming Democratic National Convention. Their current ad will even run during high-profile events, and that includes the Paris Olympics.
Certainly going to be seeing more and more of those ads in the coming days. Meanwhile, it looks like President Biden's attacks on the Supreme Court are certainly having an effect, as new polling from Gallup shows approval of the Supreme Court is at a near all-time low, with only 43% of Americans saying the court is doing a good job. That's just a tick higher from its lowest rating of just 40% following the overturning of Roe v. Wade in 2022. Much of the dissatisfaction here is being driven by Democrats, as a whopping 83% of them say they disapprove of the court, which, according to Gallup, is now the most conservative it's been in 9 decades. This polling also comes as President Biden is calling for term limits and other reforms for the Supreme Court, which he says has been captured by extremists.
The court's being used to weaponize an extreme and unchecked agenda. An extreme court that's the product of an attack on the confirmation process that's been weaponized by those seeking to carry out an extreme agenda for decades to come.
Unsurprisingly, conservatives are pretty happy with the court, with a 66% approval rating among Republicans. Independents, meanwhile, are more split. 44% say they approve compared to 47% who disapprove, according to that Gallup survey.
And finally, a shocking new study reveals that federal regulations apparently cost Americans $2.1 trillion just last year. The Competitive Enterprise Institute, which authored this study, calls it a hidden tax on America. According to their annual report, the average U.S. household lost nearly $16,000 last year just to Biden-Harris regulations. The overall cost last year was 8% of the United States' total GDP. And the Biden-Harris administration averages about 870 regulations impacting small businesses each year. And coming up next, Israel seemingly takes out the leader of Hamas along with a top Hezbollah commander. The details after this break.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
When a woman experiences an unplanned pregnancy, she's faced with a difficult decision. Preborn connects with life-affirming pregnancy clinics across the nation and provides them with free ultrasound sessions for expectant mothers. When a mother sees her baby on an ultrasound and hears their heartbeat, it doubles the chance she'll choose life. Visit preborn.com/life to save a baby's life.
Fear and uncertainty can cause us to hold things tightly and rely on ourselves. But during uncertain times, as believers in Christ, we are called to surrender fully to our sovereign God. Learn a biblically responsible investment strategy proven over 25 years. Keep the money God has entrusted to you out of companies that participate in things that God detests. Fully surrender. Become a Financial Issues Partner today.
Hey there, welcome back to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case. We're going to kick off our segment here in the Middle East, where Israel is now celebrating a major victory over Hamas following the death of the terrorist group's top political leader, a man by the name of Ismail Haniyeh. Iran says he was killed in a targeted attack in Tehran last night, where he was attending the inauguration of Iran's new president. Iran is blaming Israel for his death, though that's still yet to be officially confirmed, even as the Jewish state has been hunting down Hamas officials since the October 7th terror attack. Iran is now vowing revenge as a result, with Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei saying in a statement, quote, "The criminal and terrorist Zionist regime martyred our beloved guest inside our house and made us mournful, but it paved the way for a harsh punishment to be imposed."
And in addition to the Hamas leader's assassination, reports also suggest that the Israeli strike in Lebanon had killed the senior military commander of Hezbollah. IDF Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari released a video on Tuesday night explaining that its operation eliminated this commander, a man by the name of Fuad Shukur.
The IDF carried out a targeted strike in Beirut on Fuad Shukur, also known as Said Muhsin, Hezbollah's most senior military commander and the head of its strategic unit. Fuad Shukur was the right-hand man to Hassan Nasrallah, Hezbollah's leader and his advisor in planning and directing attacks and operations.
Hagari said that Shukur was responsible for the attack on the Golan Heights, which tragically killed 12 Israeli children. Initial reports of Shukur's demise were actually disputed by Hezbollah yesterday afternoon, as they said he'd actually survived the attack. Israel published their response later, saying that he was indeed dead from the strike, And only today, Hezbollah confirmed that Shukr is, in fact, dead.
But despite the increasing tension, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says he does not believe war is inevitable between Israel and Hezbollah. He told reporters yesterday this, quote, "We've seen a lot of activity on Israel's northern border. We remain concerned about the potential of this escalating into a full-blown fight, and I don't believe that a fight is inevitable."
I don't think war is inevitable. I maintain that. I think there's always room and opportunities for diplomacy, and I'd like to see parties pursue those opportunities.
At the same time, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. would, quote, "like to see things resolved in a diplomatic fashion."
Elsewhere on Tuesday, U.S. officials confirmed that the military conducted defensive airstrikes against militants in Iraq. According to a Fox News report, a U.S. military official confirmed that militants attempting to launch strikes against U.S. forces in the region were targeted in Iraq's Babil province. Militants reportedly attempted to launch, quote, "one-way attack uncrewed aerial systems." In a statement, the U.S. official said, quote, "This action underscores the United States' commitment to the safety and security of our personnel. We maintain the inherent right to self-defense and will not hesitate to take appropriate action." The announcement came after 4 rockets were launched last week near the Ain al-Assad air base, where U.S. troops are currently housed. There were no reported injuries from that attack, however. Militant groups in Iraq have reportedly been targeting U.S. forces, especially since the outbreak of war between Israel and Hamas.
And we're coming up on a break here, but before we go to that, Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, vowed to remove Western sanctions on Iran's nuclear program in a speech that came only moments after his swearing-in ceremony. He's also vowing to expand Iran's economic ties, calling it Iran's right to normalize economic and commercial ties with the rest of the world. This comes as Iranian inflation has now risen about 40% under Western sanctions. The new president is a reformist who called the death of Masha Amini unacceptable. If you remember, she was the young woman who died in police custody after being arrested over a hijab violation back in 2022. However, his reforms will likely be limited, even if they exist at all, as he's still ultimately subject to Iran's dictator, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. All right, and coming up next, Donald Trump celebrates the demise of Project 2025. But first, we go to a moment in history with Seth Udinsky.
Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. There are many fairy tales from the pages of history, as you well know, but the reality is, and we cannot miss this, many of these fairy tales are either based in truth or, believe it or not, many of them actually really happened. Let's consider this fact as we explore a tragic tale from medieval Germany, a tale that has given credence for the legend behind the mythical Pied Piper, a sinister fellow who is known in the old stories for luring local children to their doom with his beautiful music. There's ample evidence that this may have really happened in the little town of Hamelin, Germany, more than 700 years ago. Now, Hamelin sits in central Germany on the river Weser. It is a medieval town with a long history, but on the map of Europe, it would be largely forgotten, truthfully, if not for the fateful event that likely transpired there in the year 1284 AD. That year, a rat infestation infected the entire town. Now, in the Middle Ages, this would have been devastating for the townsfolk, as disease was rampant, food supplies were low, and rats were relatively dangerous creatures. By chance meeting, a colorfully dressed stranger, a musician who was skilled on the pipe, arrived in the town one day and noticed the problem. He went to the town mayor and proposed an offer. For 1,000 guilders, and guilders are gold coins that served as the currency of the Holy Roman Empire at the time, the Pied Piper offered to lure the rats into the river with his enchanting tune. The mayor agreed, and the piper worked his magic on the flute, luring all the rats to their doom and saving the town. But as the legend goes, the mayor was not the least bit appreciative. Thinking that he had been tricked and possibly caught in a trap with such a hefty sum of money that he now owed to a stranger, he blamed the rat problem initially on the piper and alleged that the piper had trained them in order to swindle the town. So he offered a meager 50 guilders instead, and the piper angrily refused, ominously vowing to get his revenge on the town. Well, that revenge came later that year on the feast day of Saints John and Paul. While all the adults were still in the local town chapel for Mass, the children were playing in the town square. There, the piper returned, now dressed in the green garb of a woodland huntsman. He whipped out his pipe and began to play, putting all the children in the square into a trance. The children followed the piper out of the town and disappeared, never to be seen again. The Pied Piper had, by all likelihood, led the children to their deaths to get his revenge on the town. 130 Hamlin children vanished that day, which actually accounted for almost all the children in the city save for 3. A blind child who could not see the piper, a deaf child who could not hear the tune, and a lame child who, despite being entranced, could not follow. When the lame child awoke from his stupor, he broke the bad news to the adults, who then frantically searched for many days but could never find a trace of their lost children. To this day in Hamlin, there are many historical markers that are memorializing that fateful day. And in the modern town square where the children were last seen over 700 years ago, it is still forbidden to this day to play any kind of music. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.
Are you tired of the chaos? There are a lot of things that make noise, but only a few that truly matter. As a parent, I want to leave something that will last for a long time.
You invest $300 a month increase on slowly by the time you retire.
Not just an inheritance of money, but a legacy of godly values.
Here at Financial Issues, we want to help you grow your money, but our main goal is to help you honor God with the money that He's given you.
Invest your money in a God-honoring way. Go to financialissues.org.
It was sobbing. It was a cry for prayer for God. I'm so sorry, please. So I got on the internet and I just started seeing like abortion pill reversal, and I found a hotline number. We're gonna get this started. It's gonna seem like a lot, but it's gonna be so fast, and it's because you only have a certain amount of time left. It's gonna be okay. We got this. We're gonna try to fix this for you and make sure you know you're good and the baby's good. Don't worry. And when I came here, my heart was so warm. Other than Planned Parenthood, where I was very cold and I was lost, and I just felt like I could have been, it was just terrible. And to know that Compass Care could tell me something different and get reverse a medication like that, that's amazing. That somebody would go as hard as if it was their children to make sure your child is gonna be alive and stay safe, So I want a lot of people to know it's possible. You can save your baby. You can reverse that abortion.
And welcome back once again to FISM News. I'm Ian Patrick. Let's continue our coverage with some politics, where the leader behind Project 2025 is reportedly stepping down amidst heightened criticism from Trump's campaign. The Heritage Foundation, the organization behind the project, which itself is an extensive federal reorganization plan, announced the departure of the project's leader, a person by the name of Paul Dans. In a statement issued on Monday, Heritage President Kevin Roberts said that Dans is departing the project and moving up to the front where the fight remains. But Roberts still defended the project, saying that it was created to solidify, quote, a unified conservative vision motivated to devolve power from the unelected administrative state and returning it to the people. The Trump campaign, which has denied being associated with the project multiple times, actually celebrated the news, saying, quote, its demise would be greatly welcomed.
And Ian, I understand why Trump is trying to distance himself with it. He's trying to project more of a moderate image. But let's be honest, no matter how much he disavows these things, the Democrats are just going to keep bringing it up and up because it seems to be really their favorite talking point this election cycle.
Absolutely. And yeah, you're right. If history repeats itself, as we've seen multiple times, that's exactly what's going to keep happening. They're going to keep tagging him with Project 2025 like that.
Not going to go away. Elsewhere, after more than a year, authorities have finally arrested a man suspected of brutally assaulting 2 elderly pro-life demonstrators in the city of Baltimore. On Monday, Baltimore authorities confirmed the arrest of 28-year-old Patrick Bryce, who faces now 5 assault charges back in May of 2023. You're seeing this on the screen. Bryce allegedly attacked 84-year-old Dick Schaefer and 73-year-old Mark Crosby as they were praying outside of a Planned Parenthood in Baltimore. Crosby was actually attacked so badly he was knocked unconscious, fracturing part of his face and 2 of his fingers. The attack also left him blind in one eye as well. Bryce is now scheduled to appear in court on August 1st.
Well, still in some pro-life news here, an Iowa law banning abortion after 6 weeks officially took effect on Monday, making the state one of 17 with similar restrictions. The so-called heartbeat law took effect after the state Supreme Court ruled last month that the law is, in fact, enforceable. In a statement, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds called the law a victory for life. The ban criminalizes abortion after a fetal heartbeat can be detected, which typically occurs around 6 weeks of gestation. Iowa's initial heartbeat bill had actually been tied up in the courts since 2018, when it was quickly challenged by pro-abortion activists. That law was initially blocked by the Iowa Supreme Court. However, the state legislature passed a nearly identical bill more recently that the court has now allowed. According to the pro-life activist organization SBA Pro-Life America, the Iowa abortion ban is estimated to prevent over 2,000 abortions in the state each year. And let's hope that that can remain true.
Yeah, it's a very great law and one that we pray can stay in place. I know these things can get snagged up in court sometimes. Speaking of legal battles as well as cultural issues here, Moms for Liberty is now providing a sort of escape clause to schools that do not want to allow biological males into female-only spaces or on their sports teams. The parental rights group recently saw a major legal victory against the Biden administration's changes to Title IX to include gender identity. A federal judge ruled earlier this month that any school with a Moms for Liberty parent does not have to enforce the Title IX changes, which could free up to 2,000 schools across 45 states from enforcing the new rules. Mom for Liberty co-founder Tiffany Justice says this could be a sort of wake-up call for the Biden administration.
I think there have been 5 federal judges, now thousands of schools, over 700 universities and colleges across the United States. If this isn't a message to the Biden-Harris administration and Kamala Harris, if you're watching, maybe start listening, that Americans don't want this overwhelmingly. This isn't a Republican issue or a Democrat issue. Americans do not want boys or men playing in girls' athletics. They do not want them in their private spaces. And the Democrats better wake up because they're going to lose elections based on this issue.
Exemptions also apply to schools with students belonging to Young America's Foundation, along with Female Athletes United.
All right, and I'm going to take a bit of a stretchy segue here, but speaking of female athletics, why don't we look at some updates from the Olympics in Paris, where the biggest news comes from the fact that the U.S. women's gymnastics actually clinched the gold medal yesterday. The team literally vaulted to an early lead, and it was momentum that they kept throughout the rest of the day. Even though Jordan Chiles fell on the beam, it wasn't enough to shake the U.S. team from first place, as strong performance was capped by a powerful floor routine from who else but Simone Biles. She is now the most decorated American gymnast with 8 Olympic medals total. Meanwhile, from Team USA to Team Ireland, where its swimmer Daniel Wiffen ended a 36-year drought for Northern Ireland. He edged out American swimmer Bobby Finke in the 800-meter freestyle by roughly half a second. And he is now the first athlete from Northern Ireland to win an Olympic gold medal since the 1988 Games, and the first individual victor since 1972.
Very cool. I'm a little sad he beat out an American, but still, that is exciting to see that history take place. With that, that's our program for today, so thank you so much for joining us, and please visit FISMnews.tv for more content. For any other updates, you can also follow us on social media as well, or download the FISM app. Thanks so much, God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow night with more news coverage.